What's happening, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more acid-techno, and we're going to listen to another tune by legendary duo Dynamo City, comprised of two legendary figures in their own right, which is to say Chris Liberator and Dave the Drummer, or Henry Cullen. And I'm going to listen to the repress, which is to say this is from 2005. It's called Bomb in Your Ass, and the B-side is also very good, Frustration, Frustration, though we are going to listen to the A-side and the title track. And about a decade later, I want to say, mid-2010s, I'm not sure specifically as I shoot this, they repressed it, because it was one of those records that, you know, was snapped up at the time, and after years passed, it was a tune people were still playing, still talking about. And as Stay Up Forever has done on a number of occasions, and again, shout out to Chris and Aaron in particular, they've done represses of tunes that DJs are still clamoring for, that people would still love a copy of. And so, you know, once they get a sense that there are enough people out there who'd like to buy another copy, or a copy if they never got one to begin with, they'll do a repress. So yes, I got this when it originally came out, but I have since gotten the repress, in part because, you know, I've used this in a bunch of sets, and over time, little nicks, little surface noise here and there, it gets picked up, and so when you get a chance to buy a fresh copy of a really good record, normally you have to make a move in that regard, and in that sense, or given that this one is a bit more pristine, we will listen to the repress. In any case, this tune samples a Denzel Washington movie, Man on Fire. I've seen parts of it. I don't think I've ever sat through the full thing. I like a lot of his, like, you know, crime movies. It is a compelling film as far as I can recall, but for whatever reason, I don't think I've seen it all the way through. In any case, the phrase "bomb in your ass" is in fact used in the main sample set that we will hear in the track. So let's give it a listen. This is Dynamo City, aka Chris Liberator and Dave the Drummer. The track is Bomb in Your Ass from the EP of the same name, originally 2005, though as I said, we are going to listen to the repress, which came from about a decade later. I love that metallic and there's this little ghostly, like,
charger used by convicts to hide money and drugs. They stick it in their body, they tuck it up their rectum. Familiar with that? This, look at me, pencil detonator. Timer, used as a receiver, transmitter. C4, highly explosive. You put them all together, you got a bomb. Not very sophisticated, but very powerful. That's what you have in your ass right now. Don't move, don't move, don't move.
for that though. But yeah, so it's an incredible tune. It is, I think, a significant tune for a reason that's outside the track itself. This is from '05, and in a lot of genres and in a lot of record labels, the mid-2000s were maybe not a desert, but it was definitely a period where scenes were adjusting. It was no longer the 90s. A lot of, record labels were either turning entirely digital or going defunct. And Stay Up Forever is one of the labels that persisted and kept putting out records and made it to the other side. Because again, by the time you get to like '09, 2010, there was a resurgence in vinyl and, sort of a greater desire to, keep that medium going. Whereas again, like '04, '05, like not only were a lot of scenes, I've talked about it in some of my videos, like the LA trance, like techno scene by '04, '05, it was petering out, or at least, being weeded out by a lot of companies just stopped throwing parties, and the authorities were doing everything they could to, eliminate the underground scene. And again, a lot of genres and their respective labels were either going digital, or some of them were just, sort of hanging it up and not putting out stuff. Stay Up Forever continued and persisted. So in that regard, I think it's reflective of a very crucial time in the acid techno scene in terms of like releases. Again, I wasn't in the UK, so I wasn't going to parties, and I can't speak to, what the London scene was like during those years, but I can tell you that I considered it a very, like, a badge of honor for Stay Up Forever and some of the labels. And again, that's not a knock on labels that sort of went by the wayside because of, again, shifting ability to, have the resources to continue putting out records. Again, like one of my favorite labels, Smitten, it had stopped putting out records by that time. Although I think Smitten is Dead, which was like this, post Smitten like special run of releases. I think there were 10 of them, but I think that was always intended to be like, look, this is sort of like a, a posthumous, like, a funeral party for Smitten. Rootmaster, same thing. Now both of them have kind of come back with special releases in more recent years, but Stay Up Forever, the point is, they never stopped. They continued putting out vinyl and continue right into the present day. So again, shout out to the Liberators, and in particular Aaron and Chris, who, I've interacted with personally, whereas Julian, like, I've never met him. But the point is, they kept the fire burning for acid techno on vinyl. Shout out again to Henry, and I think you can hear in this track, in a lot of Dynamo City tracks, I think you can hear characteristics that are both Henry and Chris. And this one, I feel like you can hear the percussion that is indicative of a lot of like Dave the Drummer releases. So I don't know if this one was pressed at or produced at the Punishment Farm, which is, does it say written and produced by Dave the Drummer and Chris Liberator? Yeah, it doesn't say specifically, or at least I don't see it here. But I would not be surprised to learn that this one was produced at Henry's studio, the Punishment Farm. And yeah, I enjoy the use of the sample. Obviously, it's a bit of a like crazy sample, and again, I've seen that movie in bits, so I can't even really remember who his character is talking to here. Yeah, but the idea of, using, let's say, a prison-based mode of smuggling contraband, and then doing so in a way that, could endanger yourself, having a bomb in your ass. I like the cheekiness of the sample, and pun slightly intended, I suppose. But yes, I also enjoy that like wicked rolling bass line, a very deep, heavy bass line, that metallic pulse which starts like every other, and then after a couple measures it begins doing double time work. Then the hats come in, there's the like cycling percussion at the top of the tune, like ride cymbal and some other metallic rhythms. I enjoy how the acid eventually gets into this very high, like chirping sort of mode. And yeah, I enjoy the breakdown, which is a bit unpredictable. It's a bit, it's not like a simple, everything empties out and then it begins to build up with a big drum roll. And there's nothing wrong with those type of breakdowns and build-ups, but this one is a bit more idiosyncratic. I do enjoy the, again, like thumping nature of the percussion. Has a lot of, stomp to it. It feels like a stomping type of track. So Yeah, it's a classic of the post-classic era, meaning if you often talk about classic acid techno, you're talking about 90s acid techno. This is from roughly a decade later, now 2 decades ago, crazy to think. But as I said, it's a tune that not only carried on the tradition and the ethos of the 90s, but came at a critical time when, some acid techno labels had sort of hung up the production and sort of moved on to other things. So once again, shout out to Dynamo City and stay up forever. Let me know what you think. Luca's sleeping through the whole thing because that's what she does. Let me know, and I will see you next time. Peace.